All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you today. It is Monday, the 8th. I have to look at, as always, Arlen, the little calendar on the bottom right of my screen, where I'll have no idea what the date is. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Oh, I never asked you, how was your 4th of July?
Oh, it was very nice. Thank you for asking. You wouldn't have asked me because we hadn't really, well, we spoke for a few minutes before the program, but nothing. I mean, just walked around, listened to some fireworks, which I wasn't happy about, but I was glad. My dog, well, I'm sorry my dog is deceased, but I'm glad she didn't have to suffer because you know how the dogs hate the fireworks. They just, it's torture for them.
It's tough on a lot of dogs. You're right.
How was your Independence Day?
Really nice because I went to Monterey, and Monterey traditionally has a parade and a concert in front of Colton Hall. So, you know, they had a great band that I was able to listen to, and a lot of people there. So, I even danced a little bit to the band. So I had a good time.
Oh, very exciting there. A little dancing going on, huh? Does Nancy know about this? Is she listening? I mean, if I'm not giving away any secrets because you just gave it away.
I may not be as young as I used to be, but I can still dance.
Well, that's very nice. And you can also write. I don't think that's a skill that tends to fade with age until maybe you're Joe Biden's age. I don't know that I would trust him to write an op-ed for the New York Times today, and I don't think you would either, which is why we're talking about this, the topic that's on the screen there. Will Kamala Harris replace Joe Biden? Do we want her to? That's the subject of your latest at thebigpicturereport.com. And guess what? We'll talk about it in just a few moments, Arlen. But as I always do, I do want to center the plight of the Palestinian people at this time. And it's also going to be pertinent because a lot of what we'll discuss regarding Vice President Harris's potential run as president will relate, at least from my perspective, to whether she might be better than the current president when it comes to Gaza. So let's just look real quick, if we can, at this story. Usually I talk about what happened over the past 24 hours, the past 3 days, what have you. And by the way, the killing continues. 40 dead, I understand, in the last 24 hours, according to the sources in Gaza, the Hamas Ministry of Health. But I wanted to just sort of look at a bigger picture. This is published July 5th from The Lancet. Counting the dead in Gaza, difficult but essential. We talked about this a little bit, Arlen, how the count really is almost certainly understated, right? There's probably many more dead than the official count, which is 40,000. The Lancet is estimating, Arlen, that we could be looking at close to 100,000, close to 200,000 Gazans killed at this point. I don't know. I sometimes say this, I say it again. Words cannot express for me how horrific I find this, how wrong, and how morally off everything we are as a country that we're supporting this.
Yeah, it's always horrible, but I'm curious as why you think there's a lot more than what Hamas reports or what Gaza reports. Because why would they underestimate their dead? They would.
A lot of people are buried under rubble. A lot of people they haven't found yet.
Well, it's impossible.
A lot of people may have disappeared, but we don't know whether they're dead. And because deaths that may not be directly resulting, and this is what the Lancet is saying. It's not Hal that's saying that, it's the Lancet. People die from stress, anxiety. There may be deaths from starvation already that haven't been that aren't considered part of the official casualty count.
Well, there's no doubt it's a terrible tragedy over there. And by the way, there was some speculation, I'm not sure how important it is, about a possible peace plan that could happen. At least the first time they've been talking about something like that in a long time. I don't know whether it's even reasonable or not, but that would be nice if there was a ceasefire and, people could, we could get some good coming out of that.
Well, that was one of the talk of a ceasefire, the call for a ceasefire by Kamala Harris in March, and I found a video where she said that, and she kind of impressed me more than she's never impressed me before. So I guess I should say it this way. She did impress me in that video. We'll play it. But, I'm very, very down on the Democrats, pretty much as down on them as I am on the Republican. Well, can't quite say it that way, but yeah, they're not quite as awful on balance. But I will give you this, Arlen. If Kamala Harris is the nominee and she presents as someone who is prepared to tell Israel, we're not going to support you anymore, I would vote for her. That would be enough for me. Everything else, no matter how badly I think she is on healthcare, on endless war with Russia, she's terrible on crime and criminal justice issues. But yeah, if she were going to say to Israel, no more, no mas, I would vote for her.
Well, she's a little bit restricted in what she can say. She is the vice president, and her job is to go along with whatever the Biden administration says. So she doesn't have full reign to say exactly what she really feels like. So just keep that in mind.
Well, I think that's fair, Arlen. I actually do. And my response to that is, if there's credible evidence that we can look at and from which we can glean that she really is on the side of peace and against Israel at this point, against the genocidal Zionist state, I would support her. But I haven't seen that evidence. But maybe it's there. But I was actually somewhat disappointed when I found what she actually. We'll get into that.
She can't say what she really feels. She can't let loose her actual opinions because she's vice president and that's her job.
How do you, if that's true, okay, and I don't fully, especially if she's running for president, right? If she is the nominee at some point, then presumably she can, right? She would be expected to break with Biden, right? If she felt it was the better course, and it made her more electable, you would assume she would.
Yeah, she would be on her own by then, and she could say whatever she really feels about her policies. But at this point, she's not able to do that, I don't believe.
Well, given that fact, which I don't totally disagree with, why do you feel confident recommending her if you can't feel confident that she's telling us what she really believes?
Well, and what I wrote, I gave some reasons, and I'll just kind of go over them.
Well, before you do, do you feel like that's a fair question that I asked?
Well, again, I emphasize she cannot tell us what she really believes.
Do you think she believes things that she hasn't? Do you suspect her of having beliefs that are closer to you than she's expressed?
I have no idea for sure. I think, generally she's a progressive politician, a good Democrat when she was in California. But, there's no way of knowing what she really believes right now, as long as she's still in the, Biden administration and still actually supporting keeping Biden running, but that's, again, that's her job. She doesn't have free reign.
Okay, so I cut you off. Enough of me cutting you off. Where do you want to start in terms of your argument in support of Kamala Harris?
Well, here's what I said in my latest article. I said she's articulate, talented, has a name familiar to most voters. In other words, voters who at least know who the vice president of the United States is know her name. And she's made a name for herself fighting for women's reproductive rights, which is, as you know, a very popular issue and helpful to the Democrats. And in addition, she would inherit the Biden-Harris team, so she would get all the advisors, the strategists, and critically, the tens of millions of dollars in campaign funds. That would be a lot easier for her to get than any other candidate. She's in the administration.
So I actually think that's very good. I can't argue with any of that, Arlen. Usually, I'm always looking to disagree with you, but I think your logic holds up well.
Of course, hell, I don't know for sure what she really believes and what kind of president she would be. I don't see any reason at this point to say that she wouldn't be.
Well, I mean, she's a Democrat, right? I mean, she's very firmly ensconced within the Democratic establishment. She is presumably somebody that they're comfortable with. Doesn't all of that augur ill for her being a good president?
Oh, there's another thing that I think is in her favor. She would get certain voting blocks motivated, like blacks, like women, young people. And I think that's going to be crucial as to getting people out to to vote on election day. So I think she would probably do better than anybody else in those aspects.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't agree that young people would find her to be a compelling candidate. I mean, she's always been a centrist. She's never taken, any kind of really bold stances that contradict or challenge the Democratic Party. She's not particularly, she makes a lot of verbal gaffes. So I don't see her being someone that young people would rally around. She didn't do well with African Americans when she ran in 2020. She wasn't popular there. So, I'll say this. She seems to do better than anyone else or as well. I think your point about the, inheriting the Biden infrastructure is spot on. It's 100% correct. There would be internal fighting probably if it's anyone else. The guys that do dissidents say, hey, she's the right choice because basically you're just sending out cannon fodder. And people like, both Gretchen Whitmer and Newsom want to be president. AOC probably wants to be president. And they would view this as a very challenging at best assignment.
Yeah, well, she's the most logical person at this point. And by the way, as far as young people, you got to remember that Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. She's not an old establishment candidate that so she's, in other words, she's young, more energetic. I think she can excite young people a lot easier than certainly Biden can. So I think that'll be helpful with young people as well as minorities and women, of course.
Well, the one candidate who seems to have been able to excite young people in recent years is Bernie Sanders. And he's even older than Joe Biden. So I don't know that age is what young voters are looking for. I would say what young voters are looking for is some kind of hope that, life will be okay for them. And I don't know that Kamala Harris will offer them that.
Well, certainly Joe Biden doesn't. It doesn't seem to. She at least has a chance to be, more energetic, exciting, motivated. I think that'll all be important for young people. Is there anything you've heard her say or any position or policy that you like, that you can point to? And I said this off air to Arlen. By the way, you can join us 240-242-5646. Always forget that number, 240-242-5646. Don't forget, click subscribe if you haven't already done so. One thing that I find frustrating, Arlen, and I found frustrating in your piece, and I don't want to be too hard on it because you wrote, and you're writing, I'm not. I have written in the past. I haven't been getting around to it, but I didn't see anything about policy. Well, that's not fair because it's right there. Reproductive rights. That is an important policy. But, nothing about Gaza, nothing about other issues of the day. So I'll ask you now, is there a reason you didn't talk about policies that you just don't know what her policies are? Or is it you just don't think they're as important, that what matters is beating Trump and she's the one who has the best chance of doing that? Of course, but all we know about her policies is what we learned like over 4 years ago when she was, running for president. Like I said, she really cannot say what her policy beliefs are right now as long as she's vice president and under, the wing of Joe Biden. She just cannot. So we don't know for sure what she believes on all the issues. We could maybe get clues from a few years back and maybe when she was senator. But at this point, that policy is not an issue, cannot be an issue. And so we have to go with the other reasons, how electable is she? And I think she's got a lot going in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I've made the point. I'm not the policies. Her decisions when she was Attorney General did not impress me. She did not impress me as a candidate for president. She raised her hand and said she was for Medicare for all. Then she said she wasn't for Medicare for all. She took on Joe Biden for, I think she even said he supported racist policies. I think she used the term racist at one point. Then when she was chosen to be his vice president, I don't have the clip. I was thinking about playing it, but I didn't. She was asked about that. She said, well, how can you agree to be his vice president when you said he was pursuing racist policies? And she laughed and cackled and said, well, it was a debate. So that did not give me any confidence that I can believe her, because she's going to say one thing when she wants my vote and then, against Biden, and then she'll say something completely opposite. And that's not what I want as a politician.
Again, she doesn't have free reign to say what she wants to say. So, we really don't know.
But she justified calling Biden a racist by saying, well, that's because it was a debate. So I'll say something to try to convince you to vote for me, but I don't even believe it myself. So, don't you find that pretty objectionable? I'm not saying you shouldn't vote for her, because again, I care about policy. I don't, people, if I'm buying a car from a used car salesperson and he gives me this huge song and dance, this is the greatest car, this is car performance like a Lamborghini, you won't believe how great it is, and I pay $2,000 for it and I get a car that's probably worth $3,000 or $4,000. Yeah, I know he was full of crap. He lied to me. I'm not going to believe a used car salesman, but in the end, I'm glad I bought the car because she delivered for me a good car. So if Harris delivers, I'm fine with that, but I'm not inspired by her. I'm not confident in her because she tells me she'll say something in a debate and then she doesn't really mean it. She says she supports Medicare for all and then she pulls back.
Well,
I find that very troubling.
Candidates say all kinds of different things in debates. Look at what happened in the Republican Party. They all said Trump was an evil, terrible person, and now they all love him. So, this is just how politics works.
I don't think Bernie does that. I mean, he's definitely hedged. He's definitely pulled back. He is definitely kind of, I guess they read him the riot act and showed him the instruments, and he decided he was going to just be a good, loyal Democrat. But I think on balance, Bernie tries to be pretty honest and not spin things when he's campaigning.
Well, of course, I love Bernie. I'd like him to be in that, vice presidential spot and go, possibly as president, but it ain't going to happen. So, but Kamala Harris, I can't think of anybody else that reasonably has a chance.
Yeah, I'm just pointing. I'm just being, like the turd in the punch bowl. I'm just pointing out areas where I see issues, but in the end, I don't think she's arguably no worse than the others, right? So we say maybe on a 0 to 10 scale, Trump's like a 1, a half, a 1. I know you'd give him a -10, but on a 0 to 10, if 0 is the worst you can be, I give him like a 1 because of his tariffs and some other, and maybe even 1.5 or 2. So I would say probably the Democrats are 3s at best, 2.5 or 3. I have no reason to believe Harris is worse than the other options that might be available. So, fine. What I want to do is talk about who I think is a good candidate, somebody that we would be happy was president, who would be a good president. And that's, of course, Jill Stein. But no one's talking about her. None of the progressive shows are. So and I talk about her plenty, so we don't have to talk about her right now. Maybe we'll get to it. This struck me. You can see the screen. We agree. Biden, get out, move out, move on. But you put in there as great as he has been. So what were you thinking when you wrote that? Like, what did you say? This is where Joe Biden's been great.
Well, I'm just saying that because, that's what people expect to hear, because that's, a lot of people say that they're very loyal to him for what they think is, that reason. Obviously I don't agree with him on everything. I think he's done terrible, especially with Israel and Gaza. I certainly have big problems with Biden. So that's why I want him out of there, and I'd like somebody new in there. And, you know, Kamala Harris seems to be the most logical and has the most advantages as far as getting votes and, you know, getting into the race and doing well. So,
well, you know, again, that's the bottom line. We agree. When it comes to the Democratic candidate, it's not going to matter to me. I'm not. Well, let me play this video. I said it's not going to matter, but I shouldn't say that because, as I said before, Arlen, there's a chance I would consider. Well, I'll play this video. This isn't exactly the one. It's from the same speech she gave before. She gave that did impress me. This is, I believe, March 3rd. When I watched the first part of it, March 3rd, I thought maybe I could conceivably vote for her. Let me play this.
And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table.
All right, so I stopped it there. There's a lot more to it, and I'll play a little bit more, but my thinking when I first watched that segment, and I think I saw it on Politico, and that was all I saw was, wow, that's really good. She's showing true empathy for the suffering of Gaza. That's what she's leading with. That was my understanding at that point. And she makes the connection to the hostages. That if you're one of those people who's like, well, we need to get the hostages out. We need to get the hostages out. Okay, well then you should also support the ceasefire. So I watched that, Arlen, and I thought, okay, maybe I can vote for her.
Well, she does seem very sincere. I don't know if she got full permission from the Biden camp, Biden people to say what she did, but she said it, and like I said, seemed very sincere and strong about how she felt, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, but not so fast. So Politico responded because she received a pretty decent amount of praise from people like myself, and probably maybe some criticism as well. I think there were some of the Zionist journals and stuff were a little concerned. But Politico says, wait a second, let's not go overboard. Kamala Harris has not suddenly become a caring, decent person. If you watch, it's clear from watching and reading her full comments that Hamas was the main target. So in a moment of perhaps arguable weakness, she does seem to recognize what Israel's doing is wrong. But let's go to the actual, a little more, let's just give it a little more context here. So I'm going to get that video. I just got to do this just right here. It's always a challenge. That's why I need a producer. But if I had a producer, I think I'd have trouble too, because, well, we'll see. Let's get this thing over there. Let's
the threat of Hamas poses to the people of Israel.
All right, I'm going to start it again, Arlen. This is not great audio. This is from the AP. Don't blame Hal. This is from the AP. But this is a little more of that speech. This is just before, actually right before we heard her talk about the Palestinians.
Hey, Hal.
Yes.
You certainly identified me as Vernon Bohr talk show.
Oh,
host.
yeah. See, I knew that was going to happen, Arlen. I knew it. And I appreciate you are not. This is not Vernon Bohr. So no. Let's make sure we get this thought. I knew this was going to be. See, I was scrambling around. I got to get everything done right. And good thing you corrected. And now you're the thought leader again, but it says Neil, but you're not. It says Neil to me, but it's really Grossman. All right, let's play this clip. Let's see if we can get it. Here she is, same exact speech, poor audio quality, blame AP.
The threat of Hamas poses to the people of Israel must be eliminated. And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire.
So the crowd likes the ceasefire talk, but again, it's clear her real focus is Hamas, and you'll hear a little more.
For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table.
So she said, this is currently on the table.
This will get the hostages out and get a significant amount of aid in.
And she later on blames Hamas, says Hamas has to agree it's on Hamas, not on Israel, to ceasefire, which I always find such an odd argument because Israel's doing all the killing. No, Hamas isn't killing anybody right now. Yeah, they attacked. Yeah, there was a terrorist attack, but all the killing is by Israel. So why is suddenly the burden on Hamas to agree to some kind of a ceasefire?
Well, Hal, there's nothing good to say about Hamas, in my opinion. All they care about is killing. They don't really do anything good.
Isn't that what Israel? No, Arlen, no. Isn't that what Israel, all they care about? They've killed 40,000. We just saw 186,000 potential fatalities, 7 to 9% of the population. Why are we talking about Hamas at all? It's Israel. Israel's the guilty party.
Involved in this, Hal.
Hamas, because their people are herded into a tiny little concentration camp along the sea, between the sea and the desert.
Yeah, the Gaza people are definitely in bad shape, but I don't think Hamas, as their leadership, has done anything good. All they care about, like I say, is destruction, killing, and not really helping the people. Israel, I agree, is totally horrible in this too. I think they're both equally, or maybe Israel even worse. But there's no good.
Hamas has agreed to the ceasefire terms. They've said, please, just stop killing us. Yes, we agree. Just stop killing us. We'll give you your hostages back, which is what they would have done from the day one. And Israel could end all of this by just simply treating the Palestinians like what they should be, which is citizens in Israel. Equal citizens with equal rights.
I'm not going to argue with you that it's been very unfair what Israel has done to Gaza, but again, Hamas is not a great leadership for the Palestinian people.
Well, who would be? But then then what's the alternative? The Palestinian Authority? Nothing worked. No leader for Palestine has ever been able to get decent treatment from Israel, whether it's Hamas with terror, whether it was the Palestinian Authority, which tried more tried negotiations to a greater degree, groups that have gone to the UN and said, hey, Israel's violating all these rules. They're building settlements, and nothing helps. Nothing stops the Israeli killing machine.
All right, you tell me, who would you want to be in charge of Gaza?
I want Israel to make Gaza part of Israel, to be a full, just the people who live there are citizens of Israel. That's all. They get to vote. They have full rights as citizens. They get to own land. Their property rights are respected. That's what I want, and they can vote for whatever the hell they want. If you have representatives from Gaza who are in the Knesset, there should be, and they'll vote their representatives in.
Well, that sounds good to me. I have no problem with that. Well,
you may not, but Israel does. Joe Biden does.
Yeah, again, that's my main complaint with Joe Biden. I think he's horrible. He's done horrible on the Gaza-Israel situation. He's let it go on far too long. And my hope is that Kamala Harris will be better and work for peace a lot harder than Joe Biden has done.
Well, I would hope so, but she did say U.S. will not impose conditions on support for Israel to defend itself. So she is totally accepting hook, line, and sinker that going into Gaza and killing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Gazans, and all the settlements in the West Bank somehow equal protecting Israel is somehow self-defense. So I can't get around. I can't support it.
Well, I'm going to say it again. She cannot be independently talking for herself. We don't know for sure what she really believes until she is, gets rid of Biden and is on her own.
All right, we got a caller. I think it's Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, how are you today?
Hi, Hal. I'm fine. Good to be listening in. And as usual, agree with most of what you guys are saying. I did just want to say one thing, because I hearken back to the days long before the October 7th attack, way back in the first iteration of Bernie's campaign and our revolution. And I remember saying something about, Hamas having built popularity by providing social services. So it isn't a true statement that, I mean, it may be that Hamas's long game all along was to build support among the people by providing social services as a way to get voted into power and then do things like what it has done. But the reality is that they developed support in Gaza by providing a lot of social services to the people there. And you can look this up. I just did to just check myself, right? I looked up, there's an article in the LA Times in 2006 that Hamas's popularity and electoral success is built on provision of social services, and they're talking about dental clinics and food assistance and things of that nature. So, intent aside, that is why, I mean, they were voted for by a lot of the people and put into power, is because of the provision of social services to the residents.
All right, that's really helpful, Stephanie. Let me just jump in real quick, Arlen. I'll let you get it. And I don't want Stephanie to leave yet. I just wanted to give this quote here from Shade, and I wanted both of your responses to it. He's in the chat. Kamala is a finger in the air politician. Anything on that real quick, Arlen? And then I want Stephanie's response as well.
Well, we don't know for sure what Kamala is really like. It's been a long time. She's been on her own, and I'd like to give her a chance. We don't know for sure about any of the other candidates, what they're going to say for sure. So it's all a guessing game. But we just have to get Joe Biden out of there. And one more thing about Hamas and the Gazan people voting for them. That was a long time ago. I think that was like 15 years ago, and they haven't had any elections since. So keep that in mind.
It's true, but just to respond to that, there haven't been elections, but Hamas has some support, internal support. There haven't been widespread, as far as I know, there has not been widespread rebellions, reactions against Hamas, because they have provided at least some social services and support that obviously Israel is doing its utmost to stop. Stephanie, your thoughts on Harris, and specifically Shade's comment that she's kind of, just blows with the wind. She doesn't have any internal moral compass. And anything else you want to say? I'm curious what Arlen said about her maybe being appealing to women.
I'll be honest with you. When the 2020 campaign was underway, I was a big Bernie supporter. I ran as a delegate, and unfortunately didn't get to be one because he dropped out by Maryland. But or before Maryland, but when I assessed the centrist candidates, looking at the cast of centrist candidates, Kamala was the one I would be most inclined to have positive feelings about at that time. And that was just based on things she said in debates at that time, including the one time she had a bump in the polls was the zinger she landed against Joe Biden, really, in one of the debates. She really... I think it had to do, was it criminal justice?
I think she said, accused him of racist policies. And then later on, she was asked about it, and she just said, it was a debate, as though she didn't even mean what she was saying.
Yeah, but that, I was like, that got my attention. So anyway, it wasn't the only reason. I did look into her background a little bit, and I said, I find her like the least objectionable of the centrists. If Biden were to drop out and she were to, inherit the top ticket spot, I would relook at potentially voting Democrat. Now I'm in the third party, or probably third party, Stein camp, but I would definitely take another look at it at that point. But I do agree she's kind of a finger in the wind politician. Like, I have seen her be very waffly. The only thing I'll say in her defense is it's kind of hard to know where she stands on things, because I definitely get the impression that there's not, I don't know, this could just be a totally subjective impression, but I get the feeling there's not a lot of love lost between her camp and the Biden camp. And she's kind of been hamstrung, and she remains hamstrung in terms of what she's allowed to say. And so, like, when you see her interviewed on The View, she's very poised. She's very, she presents well, but you kind of have difficulty sifting through the words to figure out what she's really saying. And that's been true the entire administration. Now, how much of that is she can't really speak her own mind because she's a part of a team and she has to sort of either just repeat whatever the Biden team wants her to say, or if she doesn't know what they want her to say something that really isn't anything. And so it remains to be seen. But so far I do have that impression that she kind of, it's not even so much that she's a finger in the wind, it's that she says a lot of words and you don't know what the bottom line is. So, but I would rethink voting Democrat if she's the top of the ticket.
You know what? Sorry to just jump in real quick. Shade is explaining the comment that, or the zinger as you described it, was, I was that girl, apparently this girl that Biden stopped from his policies would prevent from getting a complete education, something of that sort. I'm not really remembering it. Maybe does that trigger any memory in you or either of you two? I was that girl.
That was regarding, that could be about Justice Thomas. Remember, Biden pretty much let Justice Thomas get through his nomination.
Yeah, that wasn't what she was talking about, though. She said that little girl was me.
There was a big debate comment that she made that was that. I have to go back and rewatch it, but I'm not sure if that's the zinger I'm thinking about, but she really did land one on him. And
so on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So,
all right. So that's it right there. That's what got her some applause. And I mean, I'm just a total curmudgeon. That entire dialogue leaves me completely cold. I want to hear what you're going to do. African Americans have a lot of problems in this country. They're struggling. Their economic status has declined. Since that little girl was you, the status of African Americans has significantly declined in America. It's gotten worse. Black people are worse off, Kamala Harris. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to raise taxes on rich people? Are you going to build more housing for poor people? Are you going to demand that we have good jobs here? Are you going to guarantee health care for every American? Are you going to end our empire where we send poor, struggling, and working people, disproportionately black people, brown people, to kill or be killed overseas? Are you going to have Medicare for all so that we have some kind of health care equity and fairness in this country? Are you going to have tuition-free colleges? So all this, like your history, I don't give a fat rat's butt about that. I care about what you're going to do for people. And what the Democratic Party has done for the past 40 years is screw people to the wall. So unless you're prepared to say, no, we were wrong, we've done the wrong thing, I don't really care. All right, responses from both of you.
I think you're being totally unfair to her. she doesn't, we don't know what she's really thinking right now or what she would do. And you can't just say, well, she's going to do all the wrong things when, every indication is that she would probably do all the right things.
Really? What's the indication? When has she ever, did she vote for higher taxes? Has she demanded we have Medicare for all? She raised her hand tentatively and then she put it back down. She hasn't said one word about Medicare for all since she's been vice president. Any thoughts on Stephanie from what I...
Yeah, I do. Several thoughts, and they kind of point in different directions. The first is, again, what she's allowed to say about what policies she supports right now. She's totally, prevented from doing that by the fact that she's a member of the Biden team. So we wouldn't know until she gets out there and speaks for herself. She had a hot minute as a senator before, becoming the vice presidential candidate. So it's hard to tell based on that. I did base my feelings about her during the 2020 campaign on my review of what her record had been as a senator up to that point. But then the last thing I want to say is, in a hypothetical situation where she is at the top of the ticket and she is the candidate, and we do hear what policies that she's going to be putting together. And I'm with you, Hal, on the I'm for policy thing, but the problem is, they'd say all kinds of things during the campaign, and certainly there'll be think tanks talking on both sides of her ear, telling her how to get the progressives and how to get the centrists and how to try to get as many, as broad a swath of people on the left to vote for her as possible and in the center. And she'll throw a lot of tidbits to both, camps, but that doesn't mean she's going to do it. Look at Joe Biden. He promised a public option. He is part of his campaign. He talked about a public option, and after having been elected, there has been not a whisper about that. So I don't think we can judge what her policy positions would be now, because I don't think she's at liberty to have them independent from the administration. And I think, should she be at the top of the ticket, yeah, sure, we'll hear what she's putting forth, but that doesn't mean she's going to come across with it. I mean,
of course. Of course, that's the problem, is that Democrats lie all the time and say they'll do something and then they don't do it. Didn't Barack Obama did talk a lot about a public option, and then there was no word one when he was negotiating Obamacare. But doesn't what you just said, and I agree with it 100%, doesn't that mean we shouldn't even have any expectations or hope from the Democratic Party, and this is the direction we should be moving in? Stephanie, I got a picture. I don't know if you can see it. Jill Stein on the screen.
I don't have a lot of hope. I don't see it yet, but I don't have a lot of hope. And the reason I don't have a lot of hope, is because, honestly, they're a bunch of careerists now. They've lost the public service mentality, and I don't even think Biden or Harris or anyone who's at the top of a ticket is really making much of the decisions about what their policies are and what they're putting forward. There is an entire army of think tanks, lobbyists, who are forming the policies and writing the speeches and writing the positions that then these, figureheads utter at us. And I just don't think there's much, because all of that apparatus wants to keep its job, and I know people who are in that apparatus, they all want to keep their jobs. They're all, the remnants of the DLC and all of the people that pulled the party to the right, starting with Bill Clinton, all of the third way people, all of those people, they're just careerists. And, I think they're the ones making the decisions. And so that's why I don't have a lot of hope.
So isn't that, and this is my last question, then I got to let you go, because Arlen gives us his time, and this really is, he's co-host with me, so I don't want to, it's not really fair to him, but isn't what you just said, Stephanie, and I'll ask this question, Arlen, after we drop you, the argument for Jill Stein to be president, to vote for her to be president?
The reason to vote for Jill Stein is we have to deal a death blow to the two-party system, but it's going to take more than one electoral cycle to do that. It's going to take a long time. Probably we won't see it in our lifetime. But to me, I'm not voting for Stein because I think she has a chance of winning. It would be because I'm just voting to take a hatchet to the two-party system. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Stephanie. It's always a pleasure. Really appreciate her wise wisdom. Go ahead, Arlen.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of a lot of what she says, what Stephanie says, and uh, and I think I actually voted for Jill Stein a couple elections ago, just as a statement, because I knew that, my vote doesn't really count for anything in California because it's a blue state, and it doesn't really matter who I vote for. So I felt very comfortable voting for Jill Stein as a protest vote. So, she's good, but she just doesn't have any real chance. And by the way, for Stephanie, I was a little disappointed in Bernie. He's not saying anything that against Joe Biden. He's kind of being very cautious about all that. And oh, by the way, something interesting I heard too. Mark Warner is trying to get a bunch of people together, senators and all that, to talk about Biden and his chances for winning. Mark Warner did not invite Bernie, and Bernie's not going.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie's cozies up to the Democrats. He's a good soldier for them, and then they still, every chance they get, sideline him.
Well, Bernie also said that Warner's one of the conservative Democrats, so they don't always see eye to eye, and obviously he's not on Mark Warner's list of favorites.
Arlen, okay, so Stephanie said, I let her go. She said that, you're not voting for Jill Stein or she wouldn't vote for him because she doesn't think Stephanie won't vote for Jill, that's two women, because Jill Stein doesn't have a chance to win. She'd vote for her because she wants to deal a death blow to the two-party system. I understand that. But I don't really understand the argument she can't win. I find that very frustrating. I understand, yes, the polling suggests she has virtually no support, right? She's at 1%, something, maybe a little bit better depending on the poll, but very, very low. But if we all, and I was called privileged for doing this. Somebody actually said, you're privileged, you have a voice. So why don't people who have voices like you, like me, why don't we all raise them in favor of her? Since I think we agree her policies are the one thing that would make life better for those little girls like Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and I told you I agree with Jill Stein more than anybody else, but she's just not really in the race. So I don't think it does a whole lot of good to talk about her at this point.
Look at France. Everyone thought it was going fascist or was going hard right with Marine Le Pen's party. And after all that, the communists, the left, the Popular Front on the left got the most votes. They got more than Macron's centrist party. They got more than the Le Pen National Party, whatever she's called. National Rally. So if they can do it in France, why not? Can't we do it here? And I know there's all the argument, well, they have a different system and they have this. Hey, but if we all start talking about this, and I'm so disappointed with other progressive live streamers for not using Biden's failings as an opportunity to really demand that we push for Stein.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I like Jill Stein and I wish it were possible. I just don't see any realistic hope of her getting any traction at this point. And, that's just the way it is. That's the way our system works. She doesn't have the money. She doesn't have the influence. She doesn't have, a lot of the things that you need to do to run for president and have a chance.
Arlen, you had on the Big Picture Report. By the way, the bigpicturereport.com is where Arlen blogs. You can find his work there. It's really good. It's always worth the read. I know we get into it. It's heated here. Arlen said sometimes it's more interesting if there's a little bit of a disagreement. I agree. I feel very strongly about this. I feel very strongly that the Democratic Party is part of the problem and cannot be part of the solution. That's why I take this position that I take. I know many, many of you disagree, and your view is very ably represented by Arlen. You had a piece by Tom Hartman up there. It's the second penultimate piece in terms of recency. What does Hartman talk about there? Because I didn't focus on it at all.
Well, he's basically saying that the Republican Party is pretty much getting closer to what the Confederacy was during the Civil War. I mean, they pretty much, the Confederacy would not allow anybody, any slack. They wouldn't allow, anything decent to happen, and they were in total control of everything. And that's what the Republican Party seems to want. They seem to, a lot of their people are from the South. they just they're just rigid in everything and don't really believe in democracy. So, and they are closer to what the South used to be.
You mean in terms of the reactionary policies?
Yeah, and some of and policies in general.
Times are tough. Times are really bad. I 100% with you there, Arlen. It's not the Republicans are not. They're not friends. They're not allies.
And they're not
unless you pay them big bucks. Unless you give them a lot of money.
They're giving getting all the Confederate statues back, and pushing for laws that are bad for minorities, and they're not backing away. They're going full in on basically being a white nationalist party.
Well, Stephanie made the point that Hamas has popularity in Palestine because they have provided at least some, they provide services. Maybe
how do we know that? How do we know that they're?
That's what she said. That's what she said. I'm just repeating what she said. I believe that's accurate. By the way, I believe that's accurate, but I don't have all the story. But she said that. We saw in France the defeat of Macron, a centrist. Two of his biggest policies were raising the retirement age. He also eliminated the wealth tax, and he also called for boots on the ground in Ukraine. Those are all very unpopular policies, all policies that are pretty much endorsed by both parties in this country. Boris Johnson went down to defeat in the UK. He is a big supporter of the proxy war with Russia in Ukraine, one of the staunchest allies of the United States when it comes to supplying Ukraine with weaponry. So doesn't this suggest that maybe the Democratic Party, if it wants to govern, wants to represent working people, if it wants to be able to defeat people like Trump, it should really start listening to the poor, struggling working people who are saying, hey, we don't want endless war. We don't want you to make, to cut taxes on the rich. We don't want you to raise retirement age. We want you to be doing things to make our lives easier.
Well, realistically, how we are not a democracy. Those who have the money and the power, pretty much control things. So the Democrats could only do so much, and they don't have the option of doing something.
What would happen? Would they get struck by lightning if suddenly they called for Medicare for all? I mean, what exactly is preventing them from doing the right thing?
Well, for one thing, Republicans are right with them equally in power in Congress, so they can't get past the Republicans. So that makes it, very, very difficult. So, the chances are not good until the Democrats are able to control both the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
But wouldn't that be the way to get that power? Would be to say, hey, we give us power because we're going to use it to improve the quality of your life.
I would hope so, but I don't know for sure if that would work, because there's still a strong conservative streak in this country, as you know.
It might not work, but why not try? And you see, there's cycles, right? So it's true. You might lose an election, but if you have the credibility, if you've built it up, then you come back the next cycle and you win, and then you enact reforms that do make people's lives better, and then you keep winning elections the way the Democrats did in the wake of FDR.
Well, Hal, we can't afford to lose, because as you saw with the Supreme Court decision, if Trump gets in there, he would essentially be a king and do whatever he wants and make it almost impossible for the Democrats to come back. So we're in a different kind of time right now, and it's a very bad time. And, the Democrats, you can't afford to lose.
All right, Arlen, I'm going to let it lie there. As always, I have lots of other things I could say, but I won't in this today, but I'll say it tomorrow. So this is going to be it for 3 weeks. Is that right? When do you come back?
I come back the 27th of July, I believe.
All right. So that would make our next program together the 29th.
Okay.
Because that's 3 weeks from today. I look forward to it. I hope you have a great trip to Vermont. Do you have anything else you want to add to what you've already, let us know about. And it's in the bigpicturereport.com. You should subscribe to that as well if you don't already, and you should comment there. But anything else, anything I missed, Arlen, or any whoppers that I threw out there that you just are like, no, Hal, we can't let that go.
It sounds like you've got some interesting trips planned yourself. You're getting away, and that's a good thing. And
it's true. I wasn't going to talk a lot about that right now, but I'll be away for next week, and then one more day after that. So actually, I'll be gone from a week from today through 2 weeks from today, if that makes sense. That's 6 work days. Six lives to go missing.
Strong feeling that when we come back together, there's going to be a hell of a lot to talk about.
Yes, and Arlen, I say this. I say this to Shade, who's often harshly critical. He even used the word harsh. He said, "Sorry if I'm being harsh with you." You can see his comments if you go to Halitics on Facebook, or also their comments in the video. I just appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys participating. I appreciate you guys sharing your views and putting up with sometimes my very harsh retorts. So thank you for that, Arlen.
Well, I'm very happy that you have the podcast that you have now, the video cast, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and say what I want to say.
And also, Arlen, you know what? And you're welcome. But I want to just say, you commented yesterday to me, or some point, maybe it wasn't yesterday, that you're seeing some more numbers, right? That we're seeing more views.
Yes.
And that is continuing. We have 6 people watching right now, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for me, that's really good. And that suggests that we'll get more. We've got hundreds in our last few that we've done, have done better than, much better than usual. So we could keep the momentum going. And, after a while, Google will send me a check for like 10 cents every 3 weeks for the video, for the ads it puts in these.
I'm rooting for you, Hal, and, good luck. And I hope that trend continues.
Well, you know what, Arlen? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know why that happens. Sometimes I get feedback from him. Sometimes I don't. Yeah, so you should hope it continues, Arlen, because if I do start getting, those dollars from Google every month, I will prorate them to reflect your contribution by time. So, if you do 3 shows a month, I'll divide that into the dollar, and you'll probably wind up with 11 cents.
Well, I expect to see that 11-cent check in the mail.
Yeah, why is it doing this? Is frustrating the heck out of me, Arlen. My mic is still picking, and it's not your fault. It's something on my end I'm doing. I probably should turn the speaker in the other direction. Maybe that will solve it. All right, Arlen, great to have you on. Good luck on your trip back east. We'll talk again soon. You take care now.
Thank you, Hal.
All righty, and there it is. That's the end of Halitics for today. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see Arlen in 3 weeks.